Hey there, you livins. What year is it, lad? So I've been dead for over 80 years now, huh? I remember back in my day, so long ago, when I was just a young lad like you in 1880, when I was just 10 years old. I would head off to the academy in my hometown of Kentville. Josephine and James, my mom, pa, they would dress me up in my school garments, and I would start the march uphill, all the way barefoot in the snow to the academy. I was being trained for a hard military life. But that wasn't my true passion. Oh, I wanted to light up the world, all right, but not with weapons, but with lights. So after college, I headed up, or rather down, to the great, mighty land of America. It was the early 1890s as I continued on my path of passion. I remember my first boss at my first job was a General Electric in Lynn, Massachusetts. He was a very kind old man. He pushed me to become the best version of myself. It was he who inspired me to climb the ranks, and I became the head of the Illuminating Engineering Laboratory. The good old days, you know? But it was then that I created my genius piece of modern technology, the ornamental street light scheme. It was beautiful. But what was more wonderful yet was was my and Charles G. Armstrong's lightings up of the Singer Building, the skyscraper on Broadway Street in New York City. God, I worked so hard on it. I remember all the details, how we lighted it with all these arc searchlights, and the top of that magnificent structure was outlined with 1,600 incandescent bulbs. I remember lighting other skyscrapers too, like the General Electric Building in 1912. But my masterpiece, la piece de resistance, was the lighting of the San Francisco Panama Pacific International Exposition. This was the first widespread use of floodlighting at a fair, one of my fondest memories. The exhibition buildings, they were arranged around a courtyard, which had become the standard. Now, I floodlit the facades at night with the increasing intensity higher and higher up the towers, and I used different colors in each courtyard. It was beautiful. Now, the centerpiece of my masterpiece was the Tower of Jewels. The Tower of Jewels, covered with 102,000 suspended mirror-backed Austrian cut-glass prisms, which refracted sunlight by day and reflected 54 searchlight beams by night. It was hard work, that was, but it was my job to illuminate things, Now, this fair set the pattern for the lighting of future fairs. I felt like the king of the lighting world. But then tragedy struck, and my heart gave up, and I died, sadly, on March 14th, 1934. Well, lad, I gotta go. It was a treat to see the future, the lights of the future. Anyway, my wife, Catherine, she's calling me, so I'll bid you farewell. Goodbye.
Hello, matey, and welcome to me ship. Today I'm going to tell you about me life before I died. Yes, I'm dead. If you didn't know that, I don't blame ya. Not many people do know. I was on a boat most of me life. I was born on February 21st, 1776, in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. I lived there with my parents and my 13 siblings. At the age of 14, I started taking over my father's dream and joined his fishing crew. There, I realized I loved boats. In 1797, at the age of 21, I became a master of one of my father's ships, Later, I became lieutenant of a large privateer called the Charles Mary Wentworth. If you didn't know, the Charles Mary Wentworth was named after the old governor of Nova Scotia, Sir John Wentworth's son, Charles Wentworth. After sailing in the war, I married Olivia DeWolf, daughter of Alicia DeWolf. Me and her bought a farm together in 1817 near Kentville and close to Olivia's relatives. I lived there with my family. It was getting bigger and bigger. On August 3rd, 1824, at a young age, I died.
Hello. I'm sure that you all thought that I've been dead for the last 54 years, but here I am now. It's really me, it's Gladys Porter. And as some of you know, I am a very important figure in Kentville's history. Now, let me tell you my life story. I was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia on August the 4th, 1893. My father was the mayor in Sydney. When I was 7, I moved to Kentville because my father was getting a new job. His new job was becoming the editor of the Western Chronicle newspaper. Now, let's jump ahead a few years and I'll tell you about my first job. I worked at the DAR, which is the Dominion Atlantic Railway, as a stenographer. Later, I took over the restaurant at the Kentville station. I married Wyman Porter and was a mother. I did many things in my 73 years, but the one thing I'm most famous for is that I was elected as mayor of Kentville in 1946 and was the first female in the Maritimes to be elected as mayor. I wanted people to vote for me in the election, so I said, please do not vote for me as a woman, but as a human being. I'm not trying to brag, but I won the election by twice the other person's number of votes. The score for the number of votes was 970 to only 442. Some of the things that are not as well known as others are that I made sandwiches and put them in paper bags, and when I saw someone who needed food, I'd give them a sandwich. I was always said to be sharply dressed. I was a supporter for the Grand Pré National Historic Site in 1957. Have you been there, perhaps? You might know about the Gladys Porter Bridge in Port Williams. It was named after me because I raised the money to build that bridge. I was involved in the Kentville United Baptist Church, which is where Brian Johnstone and his family go. And I also received an honorary degree at Acadia and was an excellent cook. In fact, the night that I found out I was elected mayor, I was in the middle of teaching an evening cooking class. Well, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has inspired you to think about what you can do to make a difference at school and in the town of Kentville.
Hi, my name is Joseph Bars. I will tell you about my proudest victories, my saddest mistakes, and one of my biggest failures. But let's start at the beginning. I was born on February 27th, 1776, in Liverpool, Canada. My parents' names were Joseph and Elizabeth. I have 2 brothers, James and John. When I was 16 years old, I decided to join the Navy. I was one of, if not the best privateer in the war. On the ship I was infiltrating, I saw tons of young children, 7 and 8 years old, working on the ship. When the ship was captured, I set all the kids free, as anyone would do. It was lots of fun serving and telling you my story, but God is probably wondering where I am. He and I are good friends, you know? I've been there for a while, and I better go back.
Hello, folks. How are you guys? I'm doing pretty good myself, except for the fact that I'm dead. I died of a heart attack when I was 63 years old. My wife, Catherine Haskins, always told me to eat well and do more exercise, but I never listened because I'm always too busy lighting up all the buildings and waterfalls. My favorite place to go is always Toronto. First, because I was the first person to light up Niagara Falls, but also because I was there, I met my beautiful wife who I was talking about earlier. I know it may seem like we hate each other, but if it weren't for me, she would be dead, and I wouldn't have my kids, 1 son and 3 daughters. Is it bad that it's been so long I can't remember my own kids' names? Oh, I hope not. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Believe it or not, Catherine almost fell off Niagara Falls when I was lighting it up. Thank goodness I was at the top looking at the lights from above. Just remember, when you're at the top of Niagara Falls, make sure you hold on tight to the rocks. I still remember when I was younger, I loved watching and listening to documentaries about the military. I always thought that I would be in the military until I got emigrated to the U.S. and became a lighting engineer, and that's where I am right now. I'm visiting the people who live in my house now that I've died. Don't tell my wife because she'll get mad at me, but I love to freak people out by turning the television on and sitting in my comfy brown rocking chair, but I think they know I'm the one doing it by now. Well, I'm going to go scare some more people now. So, see you folks later.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Who am I? I'm Joseph Bars, a Nova Scotia privateer. I was born in Liverpool in 1776. I grew up there with my father and my mother. My father was a sailor and always took me out in the bay for fishing trips and sailing. And so I developed a love of sailing myself. I enlisted as a privateer in the 1790s. I was a privateer on 2 different ships back then. I was an officer on the Charles Mary Wentworth and the captain of the Lord Spencer, but unfortunately I lost the Spencer in Iraq. But when the War of 1812 started, I earned that glorious vessel in the dock over there. She's the Packet, the Liverpool Packet, after me hometown. Isn't she beautiful? She's already won me 33 American ships, damn Yankees, with more well on the way. Anyway, I best be on my way. My crew is waiting and we're all going on an all-day mission tracking down the Thomas. Mind telling Olivia, that's my wife, I'll be back by sundown? Thanks, and see you soon.
Hello, folks. When I was a young man with a family immigrating to the United States from Ireland in the 18th century, I opened a flour mill and raised a family. But one summer day, some American rebels, riding horses, showed up. They hollered to me asking where Henry McGee, myself, was. I respond as the honest man I am. The soldier on the lead horse gave me a letter. I read the letter out loud to myself. To Henry McGee, June 6th, 1776. The land of freedom needs you. Join arms with your brothers against King George. We request you, Henry McGee, to join the American Army and defeat tyranny in our nation. General Joseph Spencer of the 2nd Connecticut Regiment. I declined the offer, but I kept the letter for fuel for our evening fire. As the men trotted away on their horses, they seemed angered by my decision, but I'm honest and loyal, and I would not betray the king. As I turned to return to the mill, my wife had come out of the house when she'd seen the encounter. She asked why they came, and I told her. So she headed back into the house, and I walked to the mill. The very next day, the men returned, and this time they wanted me to grind some flour for them. But aiding them and fighting with them are both treason to the king. This time, though, they didn't take no for an answer. They cuffed me to their horses. They brought me to the jail. They were going to charge me with their false accusations, but after a night of sleeping on a cold floor and only eating stale bread, I finally got a lawyer to see my wife and kids, John and Henry. But we lost everything we owned. My wife was going to walk with the kids to try to get to New York. On the day of the court session at the Perth Valley Court, there was a misspelling of my name, and by noon the judge had declared me innocent because of that misspelling. I was fed up with these American rebels. I gathered everybody, all the townspeople who were loyal to the king and willing to fight. We gathered at Mr. Brooks's house with the rebels camped just around the bend. Everyone was gathered with their old hunting rifles. We snuck up to that base in the bushes, and when they were unexpecting it, we charged out of the bushes towards them. Many of us got into hand-to-hand combat, but we outnumbered them and surprised them. As we celebrated, we heard the stomping of horses. Horses' hooves approaching. We fled to the bushes as fast as we could, but those horses arrived before we knew it. The rebels were in the mood of shoot first, ask questions later, and many of us were shot down. Knowing this was a battle we couldn't win, I ran to the only place that was left for me to go. I arrived at the British recruitment camp in Philadelphia. I was panting as I reached the gate, and I spat out what had happened to the officer there. He took me inside, and I told him I wanted to join the British Army. He filed some paperwork and then gave it to me to sign. The officer led me to a room full of uniforms and handed me a new-looking red and white uniform. It was better than any clothing I'd ever worn. He also gave me some leather boots, which were better than my already used boots, which were coming apart at the crests. I was shown the necessities and stayed at the camp for a couple of weeks while getting used to this military routine. I went on patrols around the camp, but I didn't see any combat. In the later months of summer, when it was just starting to cool down, I was ordered to move towards the battlefields under General John Campbell's command. I saw many encounters with the rebels, but they pushed us back further with each battle. On September 3rd, 1783, they announced that the war was over and those blunt Americans got their independence. I stayed in the army a bit longer while searching for my family, but they released me and gave me a grant of money, 5 guineas, and 500 acres of land in Nova Scotia. After 5 years away from my wife and kids, I was finally reunited with them when I found them in Nova Scotia. We decided to all move to a small town called Kentville, you might know it, and I opened a store in one of the first grist mills in the region, which nearly gave me a heart attack from the joy it brought upon me. I've had great business through the years, and my sons joined the business. So much happiness is really starting to strain my old heart.
Did you know that I was a pretty great privateer back in the day? Caught a bunch of boats during the awful war of 1812. Over 33 to be more exact. I was really smart with catching the boats, so remembering them all got pretty difficult. I was also the captain of the Liverpool packet. That was our group of privateers around here. The Charles Mary Wentworth was one of my favorite boats to sail on. Me and one of my 13 other siblings, John, we were great privateers around this town of Liverpool. I grew up here in Liverpool. I was born here. My dad was also a privateer. He taught me a bunch when we were fighting against the French in the 1790s. This was where it all started. Me and John were close because we were only 2 years apart. His early training was on Dad's boat. We caught all of these boats together. After us, Joseph was a privateer. Joseph's my son. He was a privateer after me. He even kept the family name going after my dad and I. He's my favorite. Don't tell my other kids. I had 8 other kids. Their names were Alicia, Elizabeth, James, John, Amelia, Thomas, Mary, and then Simon was the youngest. Not all of them became privateers, but that's okay. I'm glad at least one did. Now all I'm doing is laying in the Oak Grove Cemetery in Kentville. I didn't get to live my full life. I died pretty young. Didn't have any or not a lot of time with my grandchildren, which I was pretty upset about. I also don't remember how I died. It was all a blur, but that's okay. I'm just living my now finished life with my wife Olivia and my other family members.
Hey there, I'm Everett John Ward, but people call me Klondike Ward due to one of my many adventures, because in 1890, I joined the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at the age of 26 and was later posted to the Klondike area of the Yukon, not knowing that in a few years, my life would change forever. A few years after my arrival, gold was found by local miners in the Klondike area. So, a few weeks after an amazing discovery, a friend of mine went prospecting to see if we could find a little gold ourselves. But I found enough gold to buy my way out of the Mounties and make myself one of the wealthiest men alive. Actually, I don't know if I am or not, but I was wealthy enough to build a mansion in 1904 on Prospect Avenue in Kentville for my daughter, 3-year-old daughter Evelyn, and my first wife Elizabeth Redden, who sadly died in 1924 after being married to me for only 10 years. Well, we were tore apart from her early passing, but luckily a few years later I found my second wife, Flora, who patched up but never did heal the wound of losing the love of my life and the mother of my child. Sadly, a while after being married to my second wife, I died at the age of 71 due to illness. Well, back then we died early because we didn't know as much as we do now. After I died, I put in my will that in respect of my fellow veterans, my mansion would be a place for soldiers to stay. But sadly, my wishes didn't last very long. A few years after my passing, my mansion burned to the ground. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you will choose to be adventurous as I am.
My name is Joseph Bars, and I'm pretty famous around history for being one of the best privateers, and I'm personally pretty proud of that accomplishment. It's like it was yesterday that I went out with my dad with his salmon fishing crew. Soon after, I became the master of one of my father's vessels, and then I found myself being the second lieutenant with my trusted large privateer, Charles May Wentworth, and soon after I became commander of his schooner, the Spencer. While I was commanding the schooner, my ship suddenly ran into a reef and started sinking, but thankfully other privateers from Nova Scotia came to our rescue. It was a life and death experience, but I'm glad that I didn't die that day. After that, I returned home and started sailing in the Maritimes in New England. During that time, I married my beautiful wife, Olivia DeWolf, and we had my first 5 children, Alicia, Elizabeth, James, Joseph, and John. Soon after John's birth, I left to go to war, where I took command of the Liverpool packet. I captured a slave ship and 33 vessels, and my brother John always helped me with the prisoners. Everything was going pretty well until we ran into an American privateer with at least 2 to 3 times the power of my ships, so I had no choice but to surrender my crew. We were imprisoned there for 7 whole months, and when I was released, I was forced to give up my prisoners and make an arrangement to never sail a privateer vessel. A little while later, I bought a great farm near Kentville, so my wife Olivia, with our soon-to-be 9 children, could live near some of my wife's family. I was so happy during those years I lived there with my family. I could never have asked for a better life.
Hey, you stop there. You are trespassing on my land. I'm dead, but that doesn't mean you can snoop around. You know, I lived here once. It was January 16th, 1863, and I was born in North Alton, just down the road from here. I joined the Northwest Mounted Police, and one day a man came up to me and offered me a job up in the Klondike, as the option was presented to me. I took it, without a doubt. I don't have a wife or kids, so no one to miss while I was gone. One of my first duties was cutting wood. Ugh, I hated that. It was so boring, but it had to be done. So many days, so many nights I would cut wood, cut, string, float, repeat. It was so boring and tiring, but I did it. After my police duty was over, I cleaned the settlements, and I got immensely lucky and struck gold. Like, a lot. A lot. So I quickly got as much as I could, and I bought more equipment and hired people. It was a small business that started from just a few grams. At one point, I was even selling 1 gram for 43 American greenbacks. Oh, well, I quickly became rich, and on retirement, I had 150,000 Canadian dollars. Back then, nowadays, that's like 4.8 million. I built a lovely mansion right here, and sadly, it burned down just 61 years later. I was told, I don't know, as I died just 19 years after I built the house. So how do you like this story? Well, unfortunately, you might have to be telling others soon. Bang, bang. That'll take care of them.
Look, over in the harbor. It's the 24-foot Charles Mary Wentworth, one of the finest ships I've ever sailed upon, and one of the first ships I sailed on as a pocket. I have many joyous memories on that boat, along with many others. One time, I even spent over a year aboard the Wentworth, capturing over 30 American ships in the War of 1812. That was until we were captured. It was a sad day, that one. My men and I were only set free by the Americans after we had agreed to never set sail on the ocean again. But I try not to focus too much on the bad memories, for there were way more good times on those boats than there were bad. It was a tough decision to make, but I was willing to agree to keep my life. Plus, I had a family and home that I couldn't leave behind. So, I retired my captain hat and bought a big family farm for my wife Olivia and all of our 9 children to stay at. There we taught the children all they needed to know, and most of my sons actually ended up being part of the pockets as well. My son Joseph, who has the same name as both me and my father, was even the captain. He's my favorite, but don't tell the others. Liv would always tell me, "Joe, you raise your children to be the better version of yourself." For that, I am forever proud. After some of the kids were grown, and Olivia and I started to slow down, we spent most of our day out on the back patio and taking care of the farm. My favorite part of the year was when the harvest was ready, because all the kids and grandchildren would come to help, and it was one of the 2 times we would all spend together each year. We were together for Christmas as well, but I like farming much better than trees in the middle of my living room. Other than that, my life was great, and even though I hadn't been on the water, I very much enjoyed listening to the adventures my sons had out there. I lived my life to the fullest until the 3rd of August, 1824. I lay tired out in the sun in the hayfield after a long day of hard work on the farm. I glanced at the harbor one final time and closed my eyes. Now I'm here, up in heaven. I've been up here for a couple of centuries now, and it's pretty nice. Most of my family has joined me, and I love watching the harbor from heaven. My life was great and well lived. So, on that note, I will leave you with one piece of advice. Don't live by other people's rules, whether they tell you that you can or that you can't. If your heart wants to, do it. Because someday, you will regret the chances that you didn't take.
Hello, and good evening. I'm Everett Ward. Now, you probably thought that I had died long ago, and you'd be right. I did. I wish I could tell this story from my big mansion in the hill, but unfortunately, it burned to the ground in 1965. Before I came back to Kentville, I was in the Yukon. I was in the Yukon looking for gold. I had high hopes to make a fortune. One night, 3 of my friends and I really wanted to stake this claim that possibly had a high amount of gold. Now we brought with us were enough blankets for us, bacon, and baking soda. What that night brought, we did not expect. As night began to fall, we took a few bites of our bacon and started to brushing our teeth with the baking soda. We were getting ready to go to sleep when we started to feel light drops of rain falling from the sky. We thought nothing of it and continued to prepare our sleeping area. We got our blanket and pillows ready, using a soft surface to lay our heads. One of my friends and I fell asleep quite fast, and the others, they were up pretty late discussing how to stake our claim. Was I worried? No, as I knew they would tell me their plans in the morning. But did they? Spoiler, they did. Crack! We all jumped up to see what happened. We looked around, the rain quickly started to come down. After a few moments and a few more cracks of thunder, the rain was so torrential that we looked like we'd just gotten out of the shower. The rain was not the only issue. We, of course, had the issue of possibly being struck by lightning. We were in a forested area full of tall pine trees, although, thankfully, the thunder and lightning did eventually stop. It was still raining heavily, but we managed to try and get to sleep so we'd have plenty of time in the morning to stake the claim. I opened my eyes to bright sun on my face. I was the last one awake and everyone else was packing up, so I got up and I put my blanket in the bag. We hiked for about 20 minutes until we found our district, and we staked the claim. After I made a fortune on that sweet, sweet money from the gold, I built my mansion on the top of the hill in downtown Kentville. When I passed, someone took care of my house, and it caught fire, burning to the ground. What was it all for, I ask you? What was it all for?
Hello, I am Joseph Bars. I was born on the 21st of February, 1776, in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. I was the captain of the Liverpool packet, and I was very good at it. During the War of 1812, I captured 33 ships, an impressive number if I do say so myself. But then I was captured and held for months as a prisoner. A most unpleasant experience. My mother's name is Elizabeth Crowell, and my dad's name is Joseph Bars, like me. I also have a brother named John Bars. I died on the 3rd of August, 1824, in Kentville. That's my story.
Yes, hello, what do you want? I was just in the lounge with my wife and daughter. Why do you disturb such a wealthy man? Oh. Well, that man said he'd love to know how old I am. My sons would like to know because they know it's my birthday soon, and I am old enough to know that I'm not stupid to follow your tricks. Oh, you want to know? So take my spot. I know you'll never. Well, I guess you'll kill me. I'm 65. My daughter is visiting. Okay, sir, thank you. I also want to say that there's been a lot of mysterious house fires going on around here. Okay, thank you. But please, leave my property before I will go to the constable now. If you will excuse me, I need to have my tea. It's getting cold. Later that night at the dinner table, my wife was very worried about me, and she said, Everett, darling, Are you feeling okay? You're acting very strange. Maybe go lie down. I could bring you some tea. You look sick. Much later in the night, my daughter went home and I was laying on a small sofa in my study. Everett, you need to stop smoking those things, she said. Those things will cause the death in one way or another. Well, anyway, I brought you some tea, and would you like a book at all? She says to me. Yes, thank you, dear. You're very kind to me, I said to her. When I'm telling you this now, it's 2 years after that dreadful night, after she gave me the tea. Our cook came in and gave us tea. She sipped a little bit of it and fell straight to the floor, and the last thing she said to me is, I love you. Later that night, she had died. We guessed there was poison in her tea. I fired the cook and she went to prison for her actions. Last year, I found a nice young girl and I proposed to her and we got married a week after. My daughter did not show up because she thought I was dumb to get married to someone less than a year since my first wife, Elizabeth, had died. I do get sad about it quite a bit, but I was lonely. My daughter got married to her second husband after her first cheated on her with a very young girl, and then they got married, but enough of her right now. My new wife, Laura, and I went on vacation. We're still on it now, so you probably won't hear from me for another 2 years because that is when we want to go back. That will be the next time I will write in this book, is when I will come back to my amazing mansion. Now Elizabeth just called, apparently back from the grave. Elizabeth just called me for dinner. It smells incredible, considering she's a zombie. It had been 2 years since I had returned home for a pleasant surprise. My daughter, Evelyn, was at my door. Oh, hello, Evelyn. How are you, dear? I asked her. How dare you, Father? You did not show up to my wedding, and you don't even care that I have a grandson. Why can't you care about someone that's not you? Leave, Evelyn. Glad to. I don't know why Evelyn doesn't have the same accent as me. I never knew that would be the last time I would ever see her. I wish I could change that. I wish I could do something to make her stay so I could talk to her, but karma. The next night was the last time I saw anything. Like usual, I was smoking my cigar. I should have put it out, but it did not go out as planned. It dropped on the ground, but I thought nothing of it. My wife was at her friend's house for a bit, and then she went to stay a week with Evelyn. They had a pretty good relationship. About 2 a.m, our old dog, Rusty, started to bark. He hadn't done that since he was a puppy, so I woke up and ran downstairs. That was a mistake. My clothes started to catch on fire, and I heard Rusty screaming. I never heard a dog like that before. It was terrible. The fire was covering the door. There was no way to get out. We were the only ones home. And then the last thing I saw was Rusty in flames on the ground, and then it was done, and the life I had was gone. The fire lasted a very long time. By the time Elizabeth got home, there was nothing left but the ashes of my dead body. No one actually knows what caused it. There are many guesses, but you never know. Rusty is by my side forever. Now, thank you for your time and for listening to a part of my story. And scene.
Hi there. How are you doing? I'm pretty good myself. My name is Everett Ward, and I'm currently dead. I'm the oldest of 7 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, not including me. Since I'm the oldest, I grew up taking care of most of my siblings to help out our parents. Our parents are Nathan and Sophia Ward, and they had me in 1864. I was a member of the Northwest Territory Mountain Police, and from 1879 I was stationed at Fort Saskatchewan in northern parts of the territory, 200 miles from the railroad. I had men working for me looking for gold in the Yukon. They found a bunch of gold, and it made me very rich. And I brought it back to Kentville, where I had my first and only child, Evelyn, in 1901. My current wife and I at the time were living in a log cabin with our daughter Evelyn for around 3 years. After that, we took the money from the gold and began to build our mansion in 1904. I decided to let the soldiers stay with us in the mansion since I served in the military for a while. After I lived my life for a bit, I sadly passed away in 1934. The mansion was destroyed by a fire. 31 years later, in 1965, a newspaper report began to call the building a colorful Kentville landmark. It has sort of attached itself to the name for years now. Thanks for taking a minute or two to hear a bit about me blabbering on about my story.
I am Joseph Bars. Here are the things you need to know about me. I was born on February 21st, 1776, in Liverpool. I had 14 siblings. My wife was Olivia de Wolfe. My papa, Joseph Bars Sr. My mama was Elizabeth Lowe. I captured 33 ships. In 1804, I married Olivia de Wolfe. We had We had 9 kids.
Hey, how wonderful to meet you. You hear the birds? I'm Gladys Porter. And when I'm not busy donating at the hospital or helping my town out, I spend time with my husband, Wyman Porter, and my 2 wonderful daughters. Hi! Hi! Oh. My mother, Christina, brags about how proud she is of me that I was the first woman in the Maritimes to become mayor of Kentville. I always say one of my best ideas was resigning from council so that I could run for mayor, because I had served my dream for a long time and, well, I was ready for something new. I came to Kentville when my father, Walter, became the editor of the Western Chronicle newspaper, and I always say that was one of the best ideas ever, because I can't imagine my life not doing what I do now. Unfortunately, in 1967, I died. I gave up the fight, and after 72 long years, I passed away. Not that it wasn't a wonderful life. Oh, I can still remember getting 970 votes in one of my elections. It really made me happy, because helping people, no matter how small, always made me happy and fulfilled. Well, and I remember I loved going back home to Sydney. Oh, I remember one time I went back and I was met with tons of congratulatory telegrams and phone calls. I do want to thank Mayor Ira Lonis for calling and congratulating me. Oh, well, unfortunately I must go. It's August 4th. Oh, I guess I meant to tell you that August 4th is my birthday, and, well, I'm going with my family to celebrate it. It was lovely meeting you, and I do wish you all the best and a happy, safe summer in Kentville. Bye!
Aye! It is an American sloop! Arm the guns! Get to your positions! Oh, it's just you. Hello there. I'm so used to battling ships across the seas. I've been aboard ships and sloops and other naval craft for so much of my life. Me father introduced me to his company of many boats for salmon fishing up north by Newfoundland. And ever since that, well, I've been boating ever since. Even in the War 1812, on boats like the Charles May, the Hemsworth, the Lord Spencer, the Rover, the Eliza, the Liverpool Packet, and the Wolverine. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have gotten myself into a few sticky situations. Being captured for a year of my life did a number on myself. Although I had no choice but to surrender to the Thomas, the Wolverine, before we stole it. It was twice the size of me Liverpool Packet by a number of men, by gunnery, and just about everything else. And as I said, being imprisoned in harsh conditions for so long definitely affected my health. So I decided to retire away from the sea. I've been living on a farm near the small town of Kentville ever since, with me wife, Olivia DeWolf, and me 9 children. Until one day, me health decreased greatly, to such a fallen level, until I realized something. I had died. Ooh.
Oh. Hello. Welcome to my shop. My name is Henry McGee. I own a new but super successful business. We just opened 2 years ago in 1788 and have made around $4,000 in just those 2 years. Pretty impressive if you ask me. We sell a lot of things like wheat, Gasparot, rum, snuff, tea, coffee, saddlebags, sedan chairs, furniture and clothing, and various other items. I'm getting older now, and even though I'm only 49, feels like I'm 90. I'll tell you, time goes by quickly. I just immigrated here from the USA, and to tell you the truth, I think I like it here better. When I was in the United States, they tried to go to war against King George, but I refused and then was put in prison. Can you believe that? Unbelievable, am I right? I lost my house and my business, and then made my wife and kids walk to New York all alone. But right after that, they got to come here. But I had to stay in the USA and tried to lead a loyalist group, but failed. So I joined the army. But luckily, after 5 whole years, I was allowed to move to Nova Scotia and see my wife and kids after 5 years, and we've never been happier.
Well, hello there. I'm Joseph Barse. You've probably come to hear about my adventurous life as a privateer, correct? Well, I can guarantee you that it's probably one of the greatest stories you will ever hear. It all started when I got my first job working for my father, Joseph Barse Sr. On his salmon fishing crew at just 14 years old, he always did say I had a natural talent at sea. When I was about 24 years old, I became a privateer, an outstanding one if I do say so myself. The first vessel I commanded was the Lord Spencer. Poor ship was taken down by a couple of rocks, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it was my fault. I mean, how was I supposed to know there were rocks there? Eventually, during the War of 1812, I was put as captain of a huge ship, Liverpool Packet. What a beauty she was. I had countless victories with that vessel. I even managed to steal 33 ships and 50 prizes in just 1 year. My wife, Olivia, would always tell me not to let those victories get to my head, but I didn't listen to her, of course. I ended up getting into a battle with an American vessel about twice the size of my trusty ship. I would have won, if it wasn't for my crew members who insisted we surrender. We were held up as prisoners for what felt like years. Eventually, me and my crew were returned home, Nova Scotia on parole, which meant that I had to swear to never try anything like what got me imprisoned again. Obviously, I didn't listen to them. I mean, why would I? My mischievous self ended up being captured again, but for what I believe was less time than the last time. After that whole ordeal, I decided my best decision was to settle down with my children in Kentville, Nova Scotia. Oh well, it was fun to look back at the good old days.
Hey, what are you doing in my house? You hear me? What? Warning? Of what? Oh, my house is going to burn down? And why should I believe you? You're from the future. Yeah, right. You're just some random skinny kid from the town. Are you serious about that? Huh? Yeah, I'm not coming with you. It's just another Saturday, and I will be fine. Guards, get this peasant from my house. Now! I wonder if that skinny boy was right. No, there's no way he is from the future. He's just another village kid trying to scare me. Flora, I'm going into my office for a bit. Please don't bother me. Good. Oh my God. Sometimes I wish I can't believe that I married that woman. Let's see, where are those special envelopes? Ah, there they are. Okay, let's go. Flora, stay here and please clean the house this time. I'm going out. Good. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Hello, Elizabeth, dear. I brought you your birthday letter. It's been 10 years and Florida is driving me crazy. I miss you.
Oh, why, hello there. My name is Henry McGee. I was born in the year 1741 in Ireland. When I was 35, my wife and I moved along with our son John to the United States, where we had another son named Henry. 2 beautiful boys. Then we moved to Perth Valley, where I built a flour mill. I was asked by the United States to take up arms to fight against King George for the USA to help them. But I didn't want to get involved. So the USA agreed. But soon they put me in prison for not giving the American soldiers my flour. I was never actually charged due to some not-so-swift Americans who misspelled my name. But I lost my house and my business. I wasn't happy about that, so I tried to lead a group of British against the Americans. And then when that failed, I joined the British Army myself. Well, that didn't go over very well. My wife was forced to walk from Philadelphia to New York with our children. I was deported from the USA to Halifax in 1783, and then it would be 5 more years before we would all see each other. Back to the future. I just received a large amount of money and 500 acres of land to come to Nova Scotia. And only then did I meet back with my wife and kids. And then we moved to Kentville, the beautiful town of Kentville, where I opened a grist mill and a store. And sadly, my story ended when I passed away on August the 2nd, 1806.
Oh! Hello there. Keep your head down. The ship is under attack. Right. Good day. I'm Joseph Bars, the ship's captain. From now on, you need to keep your head down while my men fight the Americans off. Well, at least I hope we can. I need to get home to my family. My mother Elizabeth, my brothers James and John, and of course my father Joseph. I'm named after him, you know. It's a family name, and most importantly, my beautiful wife, Olivia de Wolf. I started privateering at 14 with my dad. I promised I'd make him proud and will come home tonight to my family. I'll defeat the Americans with my army of men. We are unstoppable with enemies and men who constantly will fear us. Wow, you really want to get a cannonball right to your head, but for God's sake, keep your head down. No. There's a storm coming from the east. It's quickly approaching. The seas are getting aggressive. Men, we need to turn around. Brace! Come on. Turn! I don't think we're going to make it with a storm and the Americans shooting at us with bullets, pellets, and cannonballs. Men, get down! On the deck! I'm going to try to turn the ship. What? Why that concerned look on your face? A real man will go down with the ship. It's what my dad did. But he got lucky being saved by nearby British sailors. I don't think I'll get that same stroke of luck. Now get down before you get shot! Oh God! Oh God! Oh God! Don't worry. Ouch. My arm. I can't believe I crashed right into that rock. Oh no. Oh, the American ship is on the way. Now hide in the water. Head under quickly. That's where I got captured by the Americans. Luckily, we escaped after a week of being in the prison. Finally, mates. Back on the blue sea. It feels nice. Now, fix my arm, would you? Yes, that feels better. Thank you very much, mate. All right. I'm going savage now. I know I said I'd go back to my family, but I have some business to take care of before I return back to Nova Scotia. I took care of many ships before I returned back home, and I was going to make it 50 before I returned home. Ha! Good job, mates. 32 American ships captured. Let's take care of the 33rd. And there it is. All right, boys. Get your guns and cannons ready. On my count. 3, 2, 1. Fire! All right. Let's take this ship to the Americans. All right, men. Get aboard their ship and attack. The men and I fought hard, but underestimated the Americans. They had upgraded their weapons to a new model of sword that was big, heavy, and painful. Me and a few men got imprisoned by the Americans in a dark dungeon in a cave on an unknown island far from Canada. Listen, men. The Americans, they're savage. They're rogue. They're not afraid to hurt us even though it isn't allowed. Do not fear, men. I can break out of these ropes. I broke through the ropes with my teeth. I broke my men out, too. Come on, men, follow me! We ran through the cave that was highly guarded by Americans. I took out a few with swords, stabbing them through their chests, along with my men fighting them off as well. But we definitely got shot a few times with their evolved muskets. We escaped, almost leaving our lives in the cave. We stole one of their most popular ships and sailed back to Nova Scotia. I could hardly sail. My torso, my arms and legs ached and couldn't bear to stand. That was the last privateer mission I would ever go on. I got back to Nova Scotia and met Olivia along with the rest of my family on the shore near Kentville. Me and Olivia bought a farmhouse where I lived out my days. But the Americans weren't done with me and assassinated me in my deep sleep at the age of 48 and took my body for experiments, leaving my family wondering where I went for years and years on end. I love you, Olivia, and miss talking to you. I know I'm dead, but I can still communicate through letters. This was the truth of what happened to me, Olivia. Joseph Barr.